Good afternoon. I am Mac Brown. My wife and I are on the Unified Civic Monuments Project Curriculum Committee, and we have the wonderful, blessed opportunity today to interview a longtime Benton Harbor resident and one whom I like to call a friend. Would you mind giving your name?
My name is Edwina McCree.
So I've heard that the prior interview of my mother did not include a lot of background information on my mother. So I'm here to give some additional information on Edwina McCree, who is my mom. So my mom was born in 1945 in Arkansas. She was born on my grandfather's birthday. And my grandfather was a preacher and a principal. My grandmother was an educator as well. And they were later on in their life when they decided to have children, and my mom was their first child. 4 years later, they then had the twins, my aunt and uncle, Gwen and Gwen. And so they were an awesome little family. My grandfather and my grandmother, from everybody, I've never heard anybody say a bad word about them. They were just great, wonderful people. And that obviously rubbed off on my mother and her siblings. And so they were really hard workers. They were obviously in the church all the time with my grandfather being a pastor. But unfortunately, when my mom was 13 years old, my grandfather passed away from complications with diabetes and heart disease and things of that nature. And so my grandmother took up the reins. She went back to school and finished her bachelor's degree so that she could continue teaching because the rules in Arkansas changed for black teachers at the time. And so when my mom was in college, my grandmother also went to college to finish her degree. She got all three of her children through undergrad, and I think they all have master's degrees. And eventually all of her children moved to Benton Harbor, Michigan. And so she came up. She never really said that she moved up to Michigan. She still considered herself to be an Arkansas resident. She still had her house. But by the time I came along, I was the third and final grandchild. She was pretty much in Michigan all the time. So I was blessed to be able to have them around. And with my mother being a teacher, we spent a lot of our summers and things in Arkansas with our family. And I have a huge family. I'm an only child. But my grandmother had 14 brothers and sisters, and my grandfather had 15 brothers and sisters. So there was always a lot of family around, and all of them all got along with my grandparents. So we got to know all of the family. And I think that that's the biggest thing to know about my mom, is that she's just so close to her family. And then her fellow teachers and her students became her family. This weekend we just came from the class of 2003's reunion, and they honored her, and it was great to see how many of the students call her mom and still consider her that way. And we're so excited to see her. She's just a very family-oriented person. I think she had the best foundation that she could have from my grandparents.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us and helping to support our attempt to document and make sure that we leave a legacy for our young people and our stories, what happened, when, and how. And then also included in this project, part of the curriculum is the story of how the two kings for two cities, the two Martin Luther King monuments that are coming very soon, how that happened. And so we want to leave that as not only just as a landmark, but for those that may want to follow after us. And so that's another reason why we document, we do history, and that's why we have invited to have you here to hear a part of Benton Harbor's history and how that happened for you, and pretty much your coming here and the effect that it had on your life and on the community here in Benton Harbor.
Yeah.
Ms. McCree, I'm hoping I have your permission to, what is your age?
I am 77, soon to be 78.
Right.
I will be in Paris for my 78th birthday, thank you.
Oh, gosh. I could carry your bags
Please.
if you let me. Let's start with I think this is a pretty strong question. How did you get here? When did you arrive? How did that all happen?
I had no intentions of coming to Michigan. And I was dating a young man who went to an interview at Arkansas A&M College then. It's now the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff.
So you're from Arkansas?
Yes.
Okay.
Born and reared there.
All right.
And he was working in southern Arkansas, more southern than where I was in the central part. So we knew each other real well, and he wanted to get married and stuff. But he signed a contract for Benton Harbor Schools. And he told me, you need to go sign one so you can go. I said, I don't want to go to Benton Harbor. That's cold. And so I wouldn't even go for the interview. But he signed the contract, and he thought I would. But I didn't go for the interview. I said, I'm not following you anywhere. I don't even know if I'm going to marry you.
Hold on.
So that was put to rest. And a year later, Mr. Payne, he was head of personnel for Benton Harbor, came back to that school because we had a huge education department, and they needed black teachers here. And so I had married the ex-husband by now. And he...
Okay. Oh, Lord. We're speed dialing.
And he came, he said, you really should go and have an interview. So I interviewed, and I was not my nice self. I was really snippy.
Oh, wow.
And he said, well, what do you want to teach? And I said, I only like senior high. I don't do junior high. He said, well, what do you want to teach? I said, you've got credentials in several areas. I said, only English. I don't want to teach speech and drama.
Okay.
I'm an English major. He said, I can give you everything you ask for.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't say no.
They wooed you.
Here's a letter of intent. And I said, what? He said, it's as good as a contract. If you sign it, you have a job.
Yes.
So I signed it. That way, my husband and I would be in the same town. We wouldn't be 80 miles apart. Because I had been offered a job in the town where he lived, which was Lake Village, Arkansas. It's right across the river from Mississippi. And I wasn't going anywhere near Mississippi. And but they were going to pay me an extra $500 a year as hazardous duty pay.
Wow.
Because if you would work where your race was in the minority, you could get hazardous duty pay.
Wow.
I had enough. I did not want to do that. So this was the only method that we really had to get together. And Pine Bluff would not hire black teachers. Even if somebody retired, they wouldn't replace. Okay, so it was...
Where was Pine Bluff?
Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Okay.
Where
okay.
University of Arkansas, Pine Bluff is now,
right.
where our college was.
Okay.
So I came here. I did not want to leave Arkansas. Now, I'm glad I came. It has offered many opportunities. And the retirement system in Michigan is much better than what Arkansas has. And that is why I came.
That's how it happened.
That's why it happened.
You left Arkansas.
And a few weeks ago, I talked with a student. And she said, they paid you guys to come here. I said, yeah, they paid us the teacher's salary, but we got nothing extra. They didn't pay for us. No relocation.
No bonus.
We just, we only got what the teacher's salary was.
So you had full understanding that you were being wooed. and others as
Yes.
well, and to come into an African American community and teach, at that time, black children, I'm sure.
That's not what it was.
Okay.
When I came here, number one, there was nowhere to live really in Benton Harbor. There was no Napier Manor, there was no this, there was
housing.
no housing. And there was a man here who had a lot of real estate, and he was going to build us a house between the end of June and the end of July, so we'd have somewhere to live. Because we didn't qualify for the few places that had rentals, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some houses around. But think about it, none of these big apartment complexes were built this. There was no Briarwood, no Napier. What's another one now? There was nothing.
Interesting.
And
Didn't matter.
we wound up living in St. Joe in Lakeshore Apartments, where a lot of teachers live. I drove around this community after we moved here, because we moved here maybe 1st of August. And I saw lots of black people. I went for the first faculty meeting at Benton Harbor High School, and they told me, room 212. So I went up to 212. There were no black people in there. So I came back trying to be highly intelligent. What was the room number?
Okay.
Room 212. So I said, you just go up the stairs, turn to your right. So I came in and sat down. And a few people came over and introduced themselves to me. Finally, 4 other black people came in, and that was it. And I said, oh, this is why they want me here. It was very interesting because I didn't understand DSEG in Benton Harbor as DSEG from the South.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
It was a whole different ballgame.
What year was this again?
Exactly.
1968. I came here
Thank
to
you.
work in
19
September of 68.
Okay. 68, that's the year, unfortunately, the same year,
Dr. King was
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Yes.
Wow. You left the South the same year
Right.
that King was
And I
assassinated.
remember watching the King funeral. I brought my television into my classroom there so the kids could watch it. Because there were no televisions in the schools and things, not even in Benton Harbor, too.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that was really exciting for me, was good for me, I had a national defense student loan to go to school. A lot of us in the South got that.
All right.
And if you would teach, a certain percentage of your loan would be forgiven each year. Well, I had taught a year in Arkansas. And I got the percentage that you would get for Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I got to Benton Harbor, and after the first year, I sent my papers in, and a percentage was taken off. Now, wouldn't you think that in the South, in a little southern town, I mean, it's not the smallest town in the South, it's a pretty decent-sized town, that they would have gotten more, given us more off than here. Benton Harbor through the roof.
Oh,
Because Benton Harbor was in the middle of a DSEG order.
and they had to straighten some things out.
Well, I don't know if straighten it out, but I got my whole loan from college was forgiven.
They needed to keep
And
you here.
Not the first year. It took me, no, this is the federal government that was getting rid of that.
National Defense.
National Defense student loans. And I got more off here than I did in Arkansas, even though I was paid over 3 times what I was making in Arkansas.
That almost makes me think that had to be some level of government understanding
I don't
in
think
this
there really is.
area,
Mhm.
that there was a plan
Mhm.
in effect. And they set it in order for it to work, because they needed what they needed.
Well, it could
for
have
this
been
area.
just Benton Harbor. There were other
Sure.
parts of the north where they were.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
yes.
Let's go back to Dr. King's unfortunate murder in April of 1968. How did that affect you where you were then living? How did your neighborhood react to that?
They were very upset. But we were heartbroken.
Heartbroken.
But what can we do? Because we had seen so many things happen, things that are not in the news, things that were never covered, that we...
Unfairness.
Unfair. For instance, when I started, this is, you talking murder, and I'm ready to tell you that I could not teach school unless I paid my poll tax in Arkansas.
Poll tax was in effect.
Uh-huh. So I had to pay $1 a year poll tax, and if I didn't turn that in, I could not draw a check from a government agency of any kind, like a school district. Now, that was supposed to allow you to vote.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started, I really wasn't old enough to vote. But I was old enough to teach school, so I had to pay a poll tax. And a poll tax was nothing but something to get poor people away from the polls, because some of them could not afford $1. And right now, I have a copy of one of my mom's poll tax receipts on my desk at home.
Wow.
And I looked at it this morning because I'm going to give it to my daughter. She likes collecting.
It's history.
And I looked at it, and it was everything else on there. Up in that corner was the big C. So they knew everybody who paid poll tax, what race they...
Oh, the C, was that for like colored?
Colored.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, we were colored, then we were Negro, then we were black, then we were African American.
Now, when you said that Michigan, Benton Harbor was under a SEG,
DSEG order.
DSEG order.
Mhm.
Was anything like that in place when you got here?
Yeah, it was here.
As far as a poll tax, I mean.
Oh, no.
you have to pay
no,
these
that was-
things, okay.
Poll tax was a Southern thing.
Southern.
So this DSEG order.
I did not understand it. I was here a whole maybe 2 years before I fully understood it.
And so it makes me think of, we've done some research on Mary Defoe.
Mhm.
Would that have been her time that she was
Yeah,
with
she was very active then. She and Herschel McKenzie and I'm getting older.
Because there's a lawsuit, I think, on the records right around then with Berry versus the Benton Harbor. I don't know if they called it area schools at the same time.
No, it wasn't area
It was called
schools.
something
Benton
else.
Harbor Board of Education.
Yeah, Mary Defoe was involved in that
It-
situation.
Ask my daughter more about that because
Okay.
she has studied it extensively.
Mhm.
And I didn't understand why kids would get on a bus and go to Paloma or Claire or wherever. But I asked questions and I got to understand it. Are you going to ask me, did I think it worked?
I'm getting ready to ask you that in a couple of areas. Let's start with that, and then I have,
But I might not answer you.
you might, okay. So, if I ask, did that
I
work or not?
don't.
Let me start with something else, because
Okay.
I was going to ask you this before that came up. And that is that your experience that you had in the South as far as the students and their learning ability to learn and to come to school, and their health, their mindset,
Much better than here.
I was going to ask you if there was did you perceive a difference? So,
But see, there's a different culture.
From the south to the north.
Okay, Benton Harbor High School was a wonderful school. Academically, sports,
We thought so.
and everything. It's a
We
very
thought
good
so.
school. I was very proud to work at Benton Harbor High School. In the South, we were very proud of our schools. We might not get new textbooks because we only got textbooks when the white school got tired. They get new textbooks, we get the whole old books.
Yeah, that
Okay.
happened here too.
Okay. But if you all were integrated.
No, when that would have been when I was at Bard School. I do.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, I
There was-
understand
yeah.
what you're saying. Because I didn't know about Bard for some time.
Yeah,
I didn't know
Yeah, I
about
was
that
in grade
school out
school.
on Town Line Road either.
yeah.
It was a school.
Is that Hall?
No, Hall is on.
No, that was for incorrigible students.
Oh,
Incorrigibles.
on Town Line Road.
Just before you get to the church out there. It's on the left-hand side.
I don't think I'm aware.
I know I'm not.
Because you weren't incorrigible.
Okay.
Because I know your home. Your parents were not going to have that.
No, I wasn't either, and my parents wouldn't have had it either. Yeah.
I have to show you that sometime.
You will, because
And
I
I have
don't know the
introduce
structure.
you to the person who taught there for many years.
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Do you have a
Okay.
picture of it is the question.
So we have to keep that in mind.
It's probably somewhere. No, I don't have a
What
picture.
happened at the school? What was going on at that school?
Well, if you act bad long enough, they just send you out there.
Oh, okay.
Ask me who went. Let me see, what were we then? Were we Negro? Colored? No, we weren't
We were
colored.
transitioning.
Oh, so
It was black boys out there.
So
I don't think there were any Caucasian kids out there. Or Jewish kids. Because when I came to Benton Harbor,
But yet, did you say that there was a majority of whites? But
in '68, I would think, now this is a guess, I have no statistics to prove this, but I'm pretty sure Benton Harbor High School was probably 65% Caucasian, Jewish. The other was, I'm going to use African American.
okay, yeah.
Black, no, I wouldn't
Right.
say. It doesn't matter, we're still the
Yeah.
same people. Black and some Latino heritage because they would come to work and then stay.
Work the fields.
And some stayed.
And some stayed. Okay. So even though, I'm sorry, but even though you had the majority of Caucasian students, but out at this school on,
They were
on
black.
Town Line, it was mostly just black. That's interesting to know. I don't have any knowledge of that place.
Well, the school still stands.
All right.
It's a building there,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it's anything in the building.
Okay.
Now, when you came here, August of 1968, is it safe to assume that you were part of a larger group of people coming from the South
I
to
came.
Benton Harbor to teach?
I think Mr. Payne found a black college that had a lot of kids who were ready to go to work with nowhere to work because Arkansas,
Oh.
Louisiana,
Mm-hmm.
Mississippi, parts of Texas were not hiring that many black people.
Okay.
So we had degrees, we had everything, but no jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So when Mr. Payne found this place, he came down there and he could sign up.
Wow.
Dr. Dawson, who was head of education, would send him some of his best students. and others would find out about it, and they would go in and
Word of
apply.
mouth.
Everybody that came here loved teaching,
Mhm.
but they weren't all A and B students. Can I put it like that?
Wow, isn't that interesting? Let me ask this. I'm hoping you know this, and maybe this is kind of telling on myself, but being raised in the North, and someone says they're going to go down south to get educators. We're looking at our circumstances in the North, which is supposedly to be good. They're good. They're bearable. At least we thought. And then
Yes.
we're thinking, well, we wouldn't go south because we're thinking it's better. It's going to be less. So when these educators arrived from the south, and I was still kind of young, but even as of today, when I understand that that's what happened, I'm thinking, how did they pull educators from the south when I thought things were less fair, less justice, and they're producing African American educators, and here in the North, we're still struggling, trying to get equal rights.
We were
I
too.
couldn't figure that out. I still thought it was like something unusual.
Everything in the South wasn't backwoods country without houses
Okay.
and all that. It wasn't like that.
Okay.
I lived much better than my first cousins who were living in Chicago and Detroit and stuff.
This is
I had
In Arkansas.
yeah.
you see how
My
these,
mother was a
frame of
teacher.
minds.
My dad was a teacher and a minister. They had worked hard, and we lived in a city. It was not a big city. There were maybe 20,000 people there. We didn't live in the country, and there are a lot of people in the South that never lived as poorly as a lot of people in Benton Harbor lived.
Wow.
There were still people here in Benton Harbor that had outdoor toilets. Okay?
That is interesting because there's kind of this myth or just
The North
word of mouth
was
that
heaven.
the North was the
No, it was not.
wow. And then we stayed away from the South because we thought it was going to be like a lesser quality of life.
No, it didn't.
Interesting.
I am.
So we need to go to the South and find out the truth.
Right.
If you haven't been.
I know why they left the South. A lot left
Mhm.
because they didn't want to be sharecroppers or whatever. And there were different areas of the South that were much, much better than what black people were living in the large cities here. And in little towns like this, that was a farm community.
And we're back. I was going to ask, you made mention earlier, and I think also brought it up, that what was it like, the difference in teaching in the South, and then the students and the environment, kind of the mindset of the students as well, just their educational level, and you found that to be different. That was it, would you consider it lesser or higher, or were you surprised to find what?
Describe the noticeable difference.
The notable difference was that students were this was a track school, Benton Harbor High School. You know that.
Uh-huh.
They had a low level, a middle level, and college bound. And you had a counseling department that did not put kids sometimes where they were supposed to be. In the South, we had different levels. We had tracking too, but it wasn't as stringent as it was at Benton Harbor High School.
Mm-hmm.
I had a 10th grade class when I first came here. And I told you there weren't that many black kids. But this 10th grade class had all black students. And when I started looking at some of the things that they were turning out, I went to one counselor, and I said, why is this student here? I said, they're perfectly capable of doing the middle level. Well, that's where we thought they should go. I said, were they tested or anything? Because I did not know.
An assessment, some type of
And
assessment.
I asked that this person be moved. That person now has a doctorate degree from the University of Michigan.
Wow. Wow.
But she would not have gotten that, I don't think, if she had not gotten some of the other classes. That's, there were some that were in top level classes that should have gone down. And I'm not talking black, I'm talking about any kid.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what color to me you were, but go where you can perform at your best.
Right. Yes.
The other thing was, I found that parents are parents anywhere.
Yes.
There was a lot of parental support in the South. Also here, all I had to do was say, I'm going to call your house.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I would go anywhere in Benton Harbor. I didn't care. And I would drive to the houses if they didn't have a phone, which some of them did not. And one time I went out in Benton Heights, and I pulled up and everyone was looking at me, because at that time, Benton Heights was almost all Caucasian. Well, I didn't care. They were my students, and they needed some help. And that's the way I felt about it. My mom told me, when you go in a classroom, those are your children, and you treat them like your children, no matter what. And Mom's school, which was really a country school in Hampton, Arkansas, was integrated long before schools like Pine Bluff, Little Rock, Fayetteville, and stuff like that. But you treat them like they're your children, or how you would want your children to be taught. And that was here in '68. And I think in a way it is now, but all of a sudden we've got this idea, my child is dressed in all this, and my child can do this, and my child can do that. And you don't want to hear that your child needs some help. Okay?
Wow.
I'm through.
Interesting. You said earlier that you obviously came here with others.
I didn't come with others. Yeah.
But there was a
lot of people that came. I didn't know half of these people,
didn't
even
know
though some went to school on the same campus with me. I didn't know them.
Okay.
There were only 2 people that I knew that were here.
So-
No. I did know some more.
It stands to reason then that what you suffered in trying to find housing, these others also had to undergo. So once school was over, and I don't mean the school year, but the school day, aside from going through your homework, how did you all socialize?
House parties.
House parties?
We all will get to know each other. Oh, you're from where? Oh, I know so-and-so from there. And we really had a nice little community.
Educators?
Basically, because most of us did not have any relatives here. A
You
few
all
did.
knew.
So you kind of clung together.
And then where I lived, I had a community of people over there. There were a lot of educators in there that couldn't find housing here. And then there were other people of other races, creeds, and we all got together around the swimming pool out in the back. Well, you know how that place is made. It has a big building in the back. We go back and play cards there, and so you got to know a lot of people.
You know, I can remember when I began to realize that we had these black teachers had arrived, and I thought it was strange that I didn't see them in the community. And then
I was there.
Well, I didn't necessarily run into them in Benton Harbor.
Okay.
In Benton Harbor. And it did eventually, I realized that there was one or two, I can name one, that I ended up at that teacher's home, and it was in St. Joe, and I really hadn't frequented St. Joe as a young person. And I thought it was interesting, and it made me think, wow, who are they really to be black, and then they're teaching, and they're an adult, and they live in St. Joe. So that was like a real...
I guess it was confusing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting.
Something new for us.
Yeah.
Students.
Okay. I understand now.
So I didn't know there was a lack of housing.
I was looking for a church. And I started driving around, and I'm a Baptist.
All right. Okay.
And so
a Southern Baptist.
A Southern Baptist. And I think I went to just about every black Baptist church around here that I had found. And I would see students there, and they would say, why is she here? Until I found a church that I really liked. It reminded me of my dad's church, and I liked the pastor. And I got that from a black woman in Benton Harbor, who I think was born and reared here, but she was an Episcopalian.
Okay. She knew where the Baptist church was. Okay.
Yes. So things were different here, and I kept telling my mom, this is an odd town. It's a really odd town. But what I want to say before all this is over is that I am happy that I came. I'm glad that my ex-husband influenced me to come here. I love Benton Harbor. I've made some very good friends here. I have enjoyed my work. I have enjoyed my students, and some of my students are my best friends now. In fact, I have taken on a former student as my god sister.
Oh, wow.
Her family calls me when they can't find her because she's at my house. Wow. She has keys to my house and everything else.
And this used to be a student.
This used to be a student. I have a lot of students. On my street, I have 4 former students, and they all are very, very kind to me. I feel this is home.
Did you ever have discussion, did it ever come up that some of the students here, the parents even maybe here in the North, found some kind of a culture difference with having the Southern educators come into the city? Did they feel they couldn't communicate, or there was something different? Did they ever express, where are you from? Where you come from? Like there was something different that they couldn't...
I never really had that problem.
Okay.
And I didn't know that there was a problem with so many of us coming from different parts of the South until probably in the last 15 years.
Okay. It makes sense.
Because those people near your age,
yes,
and maybe a little younger, they feel comfortable talking to me. So, why'd you come here in the first place?
Right.
I said, well, I didn't want to be here. And I can't say on camera what I call this city. When that wind came off the lake, and teachers could not wear pants, you had to wear dresses back then.
Oh, really?
And the style was short dresses.
Oh, yes.
And I didn't wear really short dresses.
And go-go boots.
No, I didn't wear go-go boots. I had big thighs.
That's what came with the short dresses.
Well, I wore my dresses here.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my students looked at me one day and said, Miss, what my last name was then, did you shoot marbles? I said, no. Did you play jacks on the ground? I said, uh-huh. Said, are your knees all messed up? And I said, no. He said, well, why you wear those long dresses?
Oh, to hide the knees.
To hide my
tomorrow?
knees because I had messed them up.
Right.
I never thought my dresses were that long.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, it was funny.
Yes.
Mhm.
So this 15 years later, and even folks along our age, and you're right, that's kind of why we thought to interview and to do this, because it is a big deal. It was a big deal for us to get these strangers coming into the city to
And how
teach
did they
us.
get their education?
Right,
Why don't
right.
the black people here get their
Right.
education? Some did.
Some did.
Yeah,
Some did.
but not the way you guys kind of flooded in. We never had seen that many at one time.
Okay.
It was one and twosies, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we had Miss Fitzpatrick at the junior high school. And
Well, she was in my class.
That's what I
Okay.
figured.
Yeah. So we were just
And you laughed at
trying
her
to.
because she used the umbrella in the snow?
Well, we had all kinds of nicknames,
Okay.
and I don't think that was necessarily because you were from the South. I think we were just being naughty kids.
And you had
students.
Mr. Jones?
Mr. Jones,
Yeah.
Sam Jones.
Sam
Yeah.
Jones.
Well, I had Mr. Jackson, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Preddy, Mrs. Reed.
Now, Miss Freddie did not come. They came from the
That was-
islands.
Okay, I know they had accents, so that was
They came from the islands.
possibly even Andrews, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And there was another influence.
But Will Height, Mr. and Mrs. Will Height.
Yeah,
And they
he's
came in
from
pairs.
Iowa.
There was a Mr. and Mrs. Sanders, a Mr. and Mrs. Will Height. It was, and then
Yeah, I
there was
came
a
as
Mr. and
a Mr. and
Mrs.
Mrs.
Yeah, so it was. Oh, that's really that was family structure.
Well, it was kind of thing when you graduated from college, you got
You
married.
got married, so the South believed in getting married.
Well, some were married before they graduated.
Okay.
Some of those people weren't, but there are some that came here that got married earlier because we had married housing on campus.
Okay.
You so in love, then we'll let you get
So in
married,
love.
but you're going to stay over here.
Right, with all the married people,
Yeah,
right?
we had married housing.
Did you feel that coming into Benton Harbor, did you feel family structure was here at that time?
No, I didn't have any family here.
Well, I meant amongst the neighbors,
Yes.
the community.
Well, what I knew of the community, because see, I wasn't in the community living, I got to know more of the community actually through my church,
Okay, okay.
because they had a lot of kids in school.
Right.
Yes, that was
Which church was this, by the way?
Second Baptist
Second
Church,
Baptist Church.
Oh, okay.
where you were a little boy.
Yes.
Right.
And I got to know the people there, and then I knew their children. And on parent-teacher conferences, when the parents
Yes.
would come in, I would try to get to know them, not just what their kid was doing, but let me talk about you. Where are you from?
When did you stop teaching?
My last year was 2005. I finished in 2005. I waited until my daughter had graduated from undergrad school.
Let's take a look at the social values of 1968 and compare them to, say, 2005. What would you say our future looks like as we go further into this 21st century from an education standpoint?
Hmm.
In Benton Harbor,
In Benton Harbor?
my heart hurts right now.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I don't know.
Mm.
I actually prayed for this district. I was a Lincoln Tiger when I was in high school. I became a Benton Harbor Tiger here. And it hurts me to see some of the things that have happened.
Yeah.
And some of them could have been prevented.
Mhm.
But when you get positions and federal and state money,
Mhm.
and you don't think well, and you come up with this. And this is not what I thought Benton Harbor High would become.
Yes. Same for us, yeah. It was,
And the last thing I want to say is, please find out for me what happened to the money when DSEG came in. Like if your parents had sent you to Coloma would have gotten that per dollar.
Per capita.
Uh-huh. But Benton Harbor got the same money. You were paid for twice.
so you're saying when the parent moved the child, the student,
That district got funds.
and then
Benton Harbor got funds. Where did the money go in Benton Harbor?
For a student who wasn't present.
Right.
And obviously, we're talking more than one because
Oh, no, because we had, when I got here, which was probably, the second year of DSEG or something, there had to be 300 or 400 kids that were at different schools that would take transfer students. There were some students in the area that, where did that money go? If you're not educating them, where did the money go? Did we just spend it on crazy stuff? Just
we have to look into that.
Okay. And I've gotten this information from people who
Did some research.
who should know
They would know. Okay.
and that they were paid twice for one child. One district receiving and one district that's getting, moving their students.
how long would you say that occurred?
From probably, I know from 68 to 75 it was going on.
Oh,
And what really hurt Benton Harbor was the riot. Were you in school then?
Yes, I was.
You mean the high school, right?
Yeah.
70 or 71?
Yeah, we were there.
Yeah.
Yes, I was there.
That hurt.
It did hurt.
That hurt.
It did hurt.
And it hurt
It hurt the students. I know.
academically,
Yeah.
but this whole community lost money. Money that was here started leaving.
Yes.
So the federal desegregation case in Benton Harbor was filed in 1967, which was the year before my mom came to Michigan to work in the school district. And so there was a lot of tension that I don't think a lot of her and her friends who were coming from Arkansas really knew all of what was going on. I don't think a lot of the people who were from here who were teachers in the school district, a lot of them didn't know. I forget his name, but the gentleman who was the first black superintendent of the school district, we were talking at Mr. McKee, who used to be the basketball coach, his funeral. And he said that he spent the majority of his time as superintendent in court, in federal court, because of the case going on at that time. So the trial happened, and then there were multiple appeals. It was appealed all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And actually Coloma, the Coloma School District appealed it to the Supreme Court. They did not hear it. They denied it. But that case lasted until 2002, which is the year after I graduated from high school.
Wow.
Part of the reason why my mom didn't let me go to the school district. So in the late 60s, there had been a lot of discussion in coordination with that lawsuit that had been filed by the Berry family to have more black teachers, which my mom was one of maybe 4 or 5 black teachers at the high school when she first came. A lot of prominent Benton Harbor residents now, and former Benton Harbor residents, Pastor Lott, Bishop Burton, my mom was their first black teacher. They tell me that all the time. So, there weren't a lot of black teachers. There weren't a lot of black history curriculum subjects. Literature, my mom ended up teaching black literature. Mayor Marcus Muhammad talks about that all the time. In the 90s, she taught him Malcolm X and a lot of other black writers. And, so at the time, they were arguing for that. and they decided to sit in until their list of demands had been met. And this was coordinated by the NAACP and the students. And so they had been sitting in the gym, and there had been negotiations happening, like it was a very organized protest. And during that time, the school district had hired an outside security firm to do security at the high school. Nowadays if you go there, you'll see the machines and all that other stuff running for different things. That didn't come until I was around, so this was way before then. And so this private security firm was really, from the reports, roughing up kids, calling them the N-word, like just doing all kind of inappropriate things. And so they had reached negotiations, and they had said, we're going to give you more classes, we're going to do all of these different things. They had come to an agreement. So the next day, the students came in, and they went back to the gym to sit in. And the administration came and said, we've come to an agreement, you all need to go back to class. So when they said it's time for you to go back to class, the security guards started to, shove and push kids out of the gym back into the classrooms. And when that happened, that's when some kids started to, go against what was inappropriate touching by these security guards. And, my mom always talks about hearing the glass shattering. She was up on the third floor. Her classroom was up on the third floor at that time. But she said she could hear the trophy cases that are still there on the first floor by the gym. She could hear them being shattered. And that was really traumatic for her. She didn't know it at the time, what we know about trauma and anxiety and things of that nature now. But that was more difficult for her to come back from. There was actually a student, I can't remember if this was before or after, it may have been a few years after, who was shot in my mom, right outside my mom's classroom. That student had been in my mom's classroom, and then they had gotten into an argument. The other student left, came back, and shot him at the end of the class period. There were a lot of different things that happened during her time there that really were traumatic. But she always came back because she loved the students. But that particular, she will tell you to this day, and that's been 65 years ago almost, but she can still hear that glass shattering from the trophy cases being broken. But, from everything that I've read and the people who I've talked to about it, it was the inappropriate reactions from that private security firm that actually prompted that issue, along with just what young black people in Benton Harbor were facing day to day. There was a shooting that had happened at a bowling alley. There was a lot of different things that had kind of led up to that. And those issues really honestly never stopped because, I very vividly remember when T-Shirt was killed and I was home. I went to South Africa like 2 weeks later to study abroad. I was in college, but I was home working at the library at the time. And it was some of the same complaints from people my age as the students in the late 60s had been concerned about the treatment of the community. They were down there across the street from Lady T's over by BJ's, and this was in 2003, 20 years ago. And, we were concerned about the vacant houses and all the different things. And so while setting houses on fire is not something that I support, I can't say I didn't understand. Same way in the late 60s, I can't say that I hate that traumatic experience happened to my mother, but I understand what prompted it and what was done wrong that was never addressed. And it just kept going and going and going, and I think it leads us to where we are now, too.
Now, that's all I have to say.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to, I don't think I'll say this, that it was very disappointing when we found out that there was a group of students, mostly African-American young men, that was basically kicked out, could not return, was denied coming back to the high school, and they were shipped out.
I will not talk on camera about this, but I will tell you privately so that you will know how they treated us as teachers to talk about that day.
And I have talked to one other teacher that has shared things that we did not know, the meetings that took
Yeah,
place.
the private meetings.
There
and
was
stuff?
meetings
Okay.
that took place and about how they felt about the decisions that were being made that came out of that.
It destroyed lives.
It destroyed lives, and yes, I've heard yes. So, again, we as the students at the time, we were devastated to lose those young people. They were our friends. They were also, they had families, because when they couldn't go back to school, the families had to make a very serious decision, and some ended up even as far as even in California,
Right.
away from their families. And so we
I
never
had
understood
nightmares.
what happened.
I had nightmares,
Yeah.
and I said I wasn't going to go back to work. Because I said, if anything like this happens again, I can't protect all the students in my classroom. Luckily, I was teaching on the 3rd floor then, so I didn't see the brunt of it that was on the 1st floor and the 2nd floor. But that was some bad decisions, administrative-wise, that let that get to that situation.
Oh, wow. That's another maybe piece of history, because we have in fact went back and interviewed some of those students that were involved to the point where they were dismissed, and to hear that it was all over a request for African American history,
Inclusion.
and that they wouldn't leave it alone.
I'm going to say this,
Okay.
and then I want to stop.
All right.
I went to one of the meetings in the auditorium one day because all the kids were going down there. And this day, I did not have one student in my class.
Mm-hmm.
And I raised my hand and I asked, what do you want? Why are you sitting here all day? And they said, you don't know, you're sitting. I said, nobody told me.
Mm-hmm.
And so a young man that's back now, and you know who I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
came to me and gave me a list. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
I agreed with 80% of what was asked.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things was they wanted more black teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I understood why. You needed counselors, you needed all of that. But you can't fire a person because they are not none-black and put a black person in. That's against the law.
Exactly.
And I tried to explain that. I said, you can't do that. So what are you going to do? Well, I said, I don't care if you don't like somebody or something. You can't fire a white English teacher to hire a black English teacher. That's against the law. We've got to work this, and it's going to take a while.
Mm-hmm.
It won't happen next year. So if somebody retires, resigns, maybe you can move somebody in, but you can't just do that.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't like that day. But they did understand, some of them understood what I was saying.
Yes.
I'm through. Cut.
You know, we're looking forward to this part of the United Civic Monument project, the curriculum part, and we're hoping to just really put something together that people can actually, the children, the students, can, at this point, still hope. There's still hope.
There's still hope.
And we're still working. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thanks
And we
for
love
asking
you
me.
too.
I love you too.